Van Duyne from the great state of Texas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for holding this hearing as well. As my colleagues have already alluded to, this hearing is long overdue. It's entirely unacceptable that it took a change in control of Congress to investigate the greatest theft of taxpayer dollars the United States has ever seen. And yet, this administration has not shown an ounce of care. Behind me, I want you to look at the estimates of immensely irresponsible amounts of fraud and improper payments. The fact that the Biden administration can turn a blind eye to this dire level of fraud raises questions that there is no end in sight. OMB estimates an appalling $104 billion of potential fraud. Let's put that into perspective, because we've been throwing out numbers like they don't mean anything. $104 billion, that is a level of spending that is equal to the entire budget of the Department of Veterans Affairs, the entire budget. But it's also thought by a number of professional auditing agencies that that number's worse. It's 4 times that amount. It's up to $400 billion. And not only is this the greatest theft of taxpayer money, but it's borderline criminal and certainly pure incompetency. The oversight of this money is an absolute dumpster fire being put out by a fireman with a garden hose. Mr. Turner, you mentioned that you'd sent correspondence to the Trump administration about some of these concerns. Have you also sent correspondence communications to the Biden administration?
Yes, we have.
Do you have any reason to suspect that there was fraud, abuse, potential outlayings of dollars that were improper after January 20th of 2021?
Yes, there was.
I appreciate you saying that, because I think members on the other side of this aisle need to hear that. We have, in the last 2 years, experienced a lot of fraud. We're talking about $400 billion that, to the people that they claim that they want to help, that dollars could have gone into those pocketbooks. We just released, just because they're saying that this happened under the Trump administration, does not release Congress from its duty to be able to protect those dollars. We have to admit that there have been problems under both administrations, right? We can't just stick our head in the sand and blame Trump for everything and pretend like we heard last night that everything under this administration is rosy and perfect. We had an opportunity right now today to have an honest discussion. You would assume that getting down to fraud and abuse in saving taxpayer dollars for those people who need it the most would be a bipartisan effort. All of you are well-versed. You've done a tremendous amount of investigation. You've got solutions on the table that you want to present to us today. But instead, we're hearing about the witnesses who aren't here, the stories of people who've used unemployment. We understand it was used. It was used by people who needed it the most. But we also understand up to $400 billion was misused, and we need to get down to that. And I've got some questions. I know during my time on small business that there were issues with PPP and EIDL, and we thought those dollars were being spent overseas illegally. Do we know how much money went to international organizations and foreign actors? Do we know if this money fell into the hands of terrorist organizations? And can we track how much money actually went overseas? And probably the biggest question I've got for any of you, do we have any hope of ever seeing these dollars again? Mr. Daughter?
History will tell us that there will be a very low percentage that would likely be recovered from fraud. And that is just the fact of the matter.
Mr. Turner?
I would agree. And let me just say, it's going to take a while. As you know, that a lot of the fraud is still out there. We still have 162 open investigations that we haven't looked at. And so it's going to actually take quite a while to ever figure out exactly how much.
Mr. Horowitz?
The recovery rate is clearly going to be far below what the fraud rate is. Having said that, the public should know we're going to do everything we can in our powers to try and track down and find every dollar. And Congress has given us tools to do that. We're asking for some more. And we're going to do everything we can. We're going to also, by the way, use suspension and debarment authorities and others to try and make sure that crime doesn't pay to the best extent possible we're able to do it.
You think it's it's important to us that we start that as soon as possible and not have kind of this political theater.
Oh, absolutely. Look, and we're doing it. We've been doing it for 3 years, and we're going to keep doing it.
I appreciate that answer. Thank you very much, and I yield back.